Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast? Please subscribe, leave a review, comment, share, and consider supporting the podcast on Patreon, even at the producer and sponsorship levels. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI Podcast episode, I talk with Bethany Snyder about using advocacy to grow your organization's power and influence. Bethany Snyder, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure to be with you today. I'm super excited to be talking about a topic that's slightly different than what we often discuss on this podcast. We're going to be talking about using advocacy to grow your organization's power and influence. I'm a big believer in social impact work. I'm a big believer in various pillars of social impact work. And so sometimes we talk about things like social entrepreneurship, which is important, but advocacy is one of those pillars that I think is often very underutilized. And so I'm really excited to explore this with you more. As we get started, I wanted to share Bethany's bio with everybody. Bethany Snyder is the founder of Snyder Strategies, LLC, a nonprofit advocacy strategist, enthusiast, and optimist. She works with nonprofit organizations to help them realize their people power to pass good policy and strengthen their organization from the ground up. Engaging in the public policy process is becoming increasingly important for the nonprofit sector, and I would argue also for the for-profit sector. From the changes in charitable giving to how critical social programs are funded, nonprofits can't sit out of the public policy arena any longer. With her boundless enthusiasm, Bethany will share with all of you today how nonprofit organizations can use advocacy to pass good public policy, stop bad policy, and grow your power and influence to ensure your organization is not left out of the conversation and can meet your critical mission. I love all of that. Fantastic background, super important work. Anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in further?
Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah. And definitely, I really frame my business in terms of working with nonprofits because that's my target audience, but these obviously are advocacy strategies that anyone can use. So, but yeah, I've been doing advocacy for the past 20, 25 years. I tried to lose count. And I have been a grassroots advocacy director, a lobbyist, a consultant, and a United States Senate staffer. So as I say, I've been on all sides of the advocacy desk. I'm excited to share that with you.
Yeah, that is awesome. Fantastic. And again, we in our personal lives, advocacy, I think, is important. In corporate life, I think advocacy is important, certainly in the nonprofit space and NGO space. It's super important. So I hope this will resonate with listeners today and give you some food for thought about how you might be able to get more involve your team in these efforts moving forward. Why don't we start with you just describing for us how you got involved with nonprofit advocacy? Like you said, you've worked in the advocacy space. How specifically did you end up in the nonprofit advocacy space?
That's a good question. I really entered it through my excitement for organizing. I was always, like I say, that cruise director in high school. That was the person who was always, getting people organized and going places and doing things. And then I just caught the advocacy bug through just, I call myself I was a baby feminist. And I thought, wow, this world is really unjust. What can I do? And I learned about advocacy. Oh, there's policies that make this work, that there are policies present that are the reason the way our world is, and we can change those policies. And I know that sounds really nerdy, but I really learned that. And I thought, oh, this is such a great way to help make a difference in the world. I like, protest and rallies and those public forms of advocacy have a place in the world. But I really like that. How do you work from the inside and make those changes? So I was really drawn to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of a background, I think, has lent itself well to the work that you do. You've talked already a little bit about why you're so passionate about advocacy work. Why do you believe it works? I mean, you frame yourself as an optimist. I like to consider myself to be an optimist too, but I'm an optimist coupled with realism and recognizing just the messiness of the world. You're shaking your head, so I imagine you think of yourself the same way. But why advocacy? Why does that work? And what would your argument be to anyone who's sitting on the sidelines thinking, what's the point of even trying, because the world's just messed up?
Right. No, I hear you. It's a really dark time. I think for some of us, it's very cynical. There aren't really great role models and things happening for us in state capitals and in Washington, D.C. that make you think, I want to jump into this. But I mean, as a believer in democracy, I have to believe that people's voices will be heard, and can make a difference. If I didn't have that basic belief in America and our ability to reinvent ourselves, I would not be able to wake up in the morning and get out of bed. So I think it's just my sincere belief. I mean, that's where my patriotism lies, is that in the belief that America, one of our presidents, President Bill Clinton, once said, there's nothing wrong with America that can't be changed by what's right with America. And I completely believe that 100%. I'm also part of the LGBTQ community. And I do a lot of work with that community and for my community. And I say, if there's one community that shows you the long marathon, the long arc of justice, it is the LGBTQ community. I grew up in the 90s and it was a dark, dark time for us. Defensive Marriage Acts, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, constitutional amendments banning our ability to be with the people that we love and grow families. And now look, I mean, if you can't point to that and say there's inherent optimism in that, and it's all on the backs of LGBTQ people who came out and shared their stories, that we have realized this, at least marriage equality and, in America. And that just keeps me going every day. I can't not see that and be.
Yeah. It also illustrates that's an important one, where you see the long arc of the role of advocacy. It also shows, though, why you can't let your foot off the gas, because right now, with the current politicization of the Supreme Court and some rulings that look like they might be coming down the pipeline, some of these gains for the LGBT community, for example, could potentially be undone, right? And so we have to continue the advocacy efforts. And in this specific example, that's something that has been long fought to get those rights. There's so many other examples as well, though, where we have to continue to make those efforts. And the power of institutions cannot be underappreciated. Collectively, we can just accomplish so much more than we can individually. And so whether that's in the nonprofit space or the corporate space, we need to find ways to collectively advocate. I think more and more younger employees want to work for organizations that are vocal, who are part of the space of advocacy. And so that's a really great opportunity, not only to make a social impact, make a difference in the world, but also, to be seen as a responsible corporate citizen, to attract and retain good talent too.
Half of your question was, what would you say to people who just want to sit on the sidelines and not get engaged? I say, this is not for everyone. I don't think, but I do think that every single person listening to your podcast right now can think about, what is something that's important to my life that I care about, whether that's getting a park built down the street from your house, whether that's improving your kids, academic standards, whether that's getting the potholes filled on the street, down the street. Those are all things that you can improve through advocacy. And I give advocacy trainings all the time. And I call this is not my job slide, or this is not, part of the presentation, but this is what I say, we cannot let lawmakers off the hook. If they don't hear from you, they're hearing from other people. And again, I'm going to frame this on LGBTQ advocacy, because that's what I do for a living. But I say, I never want to hear from a lawmaker's voice. I heard any issues I care about. I didn't hear from anyone. Okay, that's like a dagger to my heart. Like, we cannot let them off the hook, even if you know how they're going to vote or you think you know how they're going to vote. The democratic process relies on us sharing our beliefs with our lawmakers.
And that's at all levels, right? So,
every.
federal level, certainly. But even the local level, I had an exchange. It was a cordial, respectful, but passionate exchange with my local mayor here just a couple weeks ago over something that I feel very strongly about, something I feel like he was being quite dishonest about, and something that I think just needed to be said, something that needed to be addressed. Did I change his mind? No. But he feels the pressure, not just from me, but from a whole bunch of other people who've been doing the same thing. He feels the pressure. He knows that he's being scrutinized. He knows that the spotlight's on him and he's not going to get away with shenanigans. And that matters, right?
Absolutely.
And so even if he still has every intention to try to take us down a certain direction, he knows that it's not going to be as easy to do it as he maybe thought previously. He's not going to be able to just pull the wool over our eyes and just move forward quickly. It'll be a long, hard slog if he's going to try to do that thing. And so, that's just one example, whether it's your local, your city council, your mayor, whether it's your state representatives, whatever level we're talking about, this kind of advocacy is important. You need to let your voice be heard. Will you tick people off in the process? Probably. Because people want to do what they want to do and they don't want to hear from the opposition. But it's always important for them to hear those plurality of voices.
No, absolutely. And I'll say, as I also talk about in a lot of my trainings, the closer you get down locally, I call it like the more concentrated your efforts are. Like if 5 people called your local city council member about one issue, they'd be like, holy crap, something's going on. But I mean, if you call 5, your United States Senator and 5 people call, they got 5 calls in the time we've been talking right now. But it's just so much more concentrated at the local level. There's just so much more opportunity to change things. And also in relation to young people, you are absolutely right. The trends that we are seeing is that young people just don't want to go to a job, clock in and clock out and go home. They want to see their work as meaningful. They want to see their work as part of a larger movement. And I think, and the same with the nonprofit sector. And that's what I think is so great about legislative advocacy. And I would actually challenge some of your listeners that are part of the corporate community, instead of just building houses for Habitat for Humanity, go ask them what their legislative agenda is. Instead of just packing food at that food bank, go and ask them how you can actually address hunger in your community. A lot of those things I call just Band-Aid. I mean, don't get me wrong, we need to meet people's individual needs. It's sad that in America we have hungry people. But if we really want to address hunger, it's about changing those policies that are creating these inequities. And that's where I think they can really show, put their money where their mouth is, if you will.
Yeah. So it's the systems that need to be addressed, right? Otherwise, we're just playing whack-a-mole and putting Band-Aids on major issues and major problems. Yeah. Basic needs, do they need to be met? Absolutely. But basic needs are just that. They're basic needs. And that's never going to get at the real crux of the problem. And it's, one of the reasons why we talk about generational issues that are just seem to constantly be perpetuated. It's because we're not tackling the systems at play, the systems of inequality that need to be broken down, deconstructed, and often rebuilt in a way that's much more fair and equitable to everyone involved. That's what we need to do. I mean, and that can only happen through advocacy and pressure being brought to bear on those who are putting the laws in place, right, for how these systems are structured.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I can't say better. Yeah.
Well, good. So, and we've already alluded to this a bit, but the intimidating nature of advocacy, people, who are like, I don't want to go out and protest. I don't want to, it seems so pointless to call my representative or to write them. It can be very intimidating. Yeah. What would you say to people, trying to motivate them to get started to do something, but also how to be effective in doing it?
Yeah. So first of all, I always remind people that you are the boss of your elected officials. You hire them and fire them through elections. Now, sometimes we don't always the person we're advocating for in the hiring committee doesn't get elected, doesn't get hired, but we still have to work with them. So I always think about that. We pay their salaries through taxes. So you are their boss. And if you don't give them direction on which way to go, they're just going to do their own thing. And we know how that is as a manager with our people, right? We have to give them direction. So first of all, just to reframe it, that's the way system's set up. We are these people's bosses and they want to hear from us. Second, I will say that I think it's just like a work call. Like I really approach this stuff, although I'm very passionate about it. It's just, we're at work. So like, if you're going to have to make that cold call for work or call that person, or you just call and work. And then remember, the federal level, you're talking to interns, you're talking to people who are between the ages of 20 and 24 or answering the phones. They aren't there to get into a disagreement with you. They are there just to take your opinion, log it, and get to the next phone call. They're not there to have a protracted, conversation with you. And neither do the other levels of government. They really are set up to get their constituents' opinions and thoughts, and then move on to the next person. Yeah. So I would just say the easiest way for someone to dip their toe into advocacy is just, my first thing I tell people to do is look for those don't make it hard on yourself. I can guarantee if there's an issue you are passionate about, there's an organization out there that is doing some kind of legislative advocacy about it. I'd be hard pressed for you not to name some kind of issues I'm passionate about. So go find those orgs. Find those orgs that have the same viewpoint as you, that are working towards the same policy change as you. And they pay people to follow this stuff. There's no need for you to follow bills. There's no need for you to figure out who your lawmakers are. They will do that all for you. So that would be my first thing, just follow those orgs. And then when they ask, just take action. Send an email to your lawmaker. That's so easy. We send emails every day. Send it, and then the next time, maybe you'll make that phone call, and maybe the next time you'll actually go up to the Capitol. But it's all about just dipping your toe in right now and just sending that email.
Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Academy, courses, micro-credentials, and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. All HCI Academy courses, micro-credentials, and certificates are designed, developed, and delivered by award-winning and internationally renowned scholars, educators, thought leaders, executives, and practitioners. Our courses, micro-credentials, and certificates will help you make your mark on the future of work and make an immediate impact in your organizations. Check out the HCI Academy and our many course offerings and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Excellent. And as I think about the types of things that I feel passionate about, I have to pick and choose. I only have so much energy. I only have so much bandwidth. I can't do everything, even though I feel strongly about a lot of things. But certainly one way to help with that is to not feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. So to your point, there are other people who also feel passionately. There are other organizations. There are existing nonprofits. I happen to live in the nonprofit mecca of the United States. We have more nonprofits per capita in my area. We have a lot.
Minneapolis might want to get an arm. arm wrestle you for that title.
Yeah,
But.
well, and the problem we have here, we have a lot of really well-meaning people, a lot of do-gooders, people that feel strongly about things, but instead of getting involved with existing organizations that are already doing it and scanning the environment and figuring out where they can get plugged in, they just start a new nonprofit.
Yeah,
and
no,
so,
that happens. Yeah,
if you're so then you just you'll have like 20 nonprofits all doing the same thing, all competing for the same resources, and that's really silly. And so, I say we have more per capita, but they're all like, so many of them are so small and well-intentioned people, but they don't really know what they're doing. So let's focus our efforts in ways that are going to make sense. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to start something from scratch. Get plugged into what's already happening and find a way to influence. And then instead of me having to feel like I have this huge heavy lift of having to do everything myself, I'm just one of thousands of people who are already passionate about this issue, and I can add my voice, right? And that allows me to do more, have more reach, right, than I would otherwise.
No, absolutely. If you belong to any kind of nonprofit Facebook group or page, this probably comes up daily, if not every other day, on someone who's like, I want to start a new nonprofit. And I feel so bad because they're going to get piled on. That's like, have you looked to see if there's nonprofits in your community do it like that? It just happens every single day. So yes, absolutely. And I know sometimes that, is unsatisfying and people are like, no, I want to start my own thing. But I think I always say, try working with another org first. We're stronger together than we are apart. So absolutely. Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes when people just decide they want to spin up their own thing, it ends up being more about them and perhaps their ego, right, than actually the issue at play, because they're not going to be, there's no way that they're going to be as impactful as they could be getting plugged into the network, the existing network and resources. So again, if we feel strongly about an issue, let's not make it about us. Let's make it about the issue and making a difference, a sustainable, measurable social impact. That's, I think, ultimately what we want, really, hopefully.
Absolutely.
So again, let's look at what makes sense for us. Let's look at how we can get ourselves tapped in to the space, the issues that we're passionate about, that we feel strongly about. And then let's look for ways that we can get our organizations involved. Now, organizations and the people in those organizations are not a monolith. So it's not like we're going to be able to get everyone who works for a large organization to agree on complex issues. So that can be a little bit challenging to navigate in a nonprofit space where you have like, you're very mission driven, usually around a specific issue or a small set of specific issues. That might be a little bit easier. But any thoughts on that, how we can lead out in an organization to get involved with organizational advocacy when we have diverse, sets of ideologies represented?
No, absolutely. I think, the world of legislative advocacy is kind of just like any other endeavor. When you break it down, it's hiring the people who have the subject matter expertise. So make sure you're talking to other, if you're an organization that wants to do advocacy, make sure you hire some kind of person who's done advocacy. I know that sounds like, why wouldn't you? But you'd be surprised. And then finding out, again, what is going on out there already? Are there other organizations that are working on a similar bill? And it's really, legislative advocacy is all, I just read this thing that I thought was perfect. Luck equals like preparedness plus opportunity. And that's what legislative advocacy is. Like, if the opportunity presents itself, if you are not prepared, you're not going to be able to, leverage it. So for example, there's a whole bunch of ARPA funds. That's the American Rescue Plan money, right, from COVID. Tons of ARPA funds that are going into local communities like yours. Well, some nonprofits are being really, they're great at being able to like, okay, we need it. How do we get this money? How do we put it towards a food bank, or how do we put it towards these basic needs that we need to help people who are really suffering due to COVID with housing or employment services? And others are still just scrambling. And it's not that they're not worthy of the money. It's just that they weren't prepared. And so it's about, how do you make sure that you're ready and prepared for that opportunity? So, when it comes to legislative advocacy, you're not going to change one policy typically won't change your whole entire thing, but it's about those little wins that build up to make that really big win. So sometimes things might seem really trivial, but once you get that one little thing, then you build a partner with that lawmaker or another org, and then you can continue to scale it and build up until you really feel like you're making impactful change for a lot of folks. So when I worked for United States Senator, I was his healthcare policy outreach liaison. So I worked in his state office, which all members of Congress are right in your state. There's no need to go to DC. I say they're literally sitting there on the phone waiting for you to call them and invite you to your facility. But I worked on the Affordable Care Act, which I would say that was monumental. Having done healthcare policy I'd only done it for maybe 10 years before that. That was monumental and historically changed our healthcare landscape. But that was years in the making. I mean, the things that got put into that bill were orgs that have been working for years and years and years on initiatives. And they were just ready for the time that was right to then, get it into the Affordable Care Act and then it become law. So that's a good example.
Yeah. Excellent. Bethany, it has just been a real pleasure. We've just scratched the surface. I know there's tons more we could talk about, but for today, we're going to have to start to wrap up. Yeah. I wanted to give you a chance, though, before we do that, to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me. My firm is called Snyder Strategies, and you can find me at snyderstrategies.me. And you can sign up for my email list. I will share I share little tidbits about advocacy, and I also might make you laugh sometimes. I'm also on LinkedIn and on Facebook are the two places you can find me and my company where I share things. And I guess the last thing I want to share with you is one of the sayings that I say to myself every day that I wake up is from the anthropologist Margaret Mead, who said, I'm going to paraphrase because I usually have the saying right in front of me when I say it, but there's nothing that a small group of citizens can't do in this world. In fact, it's the only way that change has ever been made. I totally just paraphrase that. Margaret Mead is rolling over in her grave. She's so upset with me that I slaughtered that. But the whole point is, small groups of people working together is the way that we make change. And I hope that you will band with other people to do that. Thank you for having me.
Well said, Bethany. I encourage listeners to band together. Let's make our voices heard. Wonderful conversation today. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Bethany can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Check out my new book, The Future Leader, Creating and Transforming Next-Gen Organizations. Stemming from 2 decades of professional experience and over 600 in-depth interviews with executives, thought leaders, and scholars from across the globe, The Future Leader will help you explore the ordinary, everyday actions that will help you to prepare to lead in the future of work, to respond to an uncertain future, and to produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership, the journey of becoming a truly remarkable leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There is no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of your problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.